Okay, so today I'm going to tackle about the Azure model of instructional design. Okay, so when we say Azure model, it is an instructional system or guideline that teachers can use to develop lesson plans which integrate the use of technology and media. The Azure model places the focus on the learner and the overall outcome of accomplishing learning objectives. The Azure model is an enriched evolution of the ADI general model, although the Azure model has 6 steps which do not exactly correspond to ADI's 5. Azure have also presents designs phases and shares with it the two main features, which is the initial focus on analysis and the cyclic structure. And the peculiar feature of this model is that it is focused on planning and conducting instruction that incorporates media. And its main perspective is on how to integrate media into instruction in a method capable of producing the desired learning outcomes. The Azure model gained popularity because of its use in a popular textbook for educators. It is a well known instructional design guide that uses the constructivist perspective, which integrates multimedia and technology to enhance the learning environment. The Azure model was modified to be used by teachers in the classroom. And the Azure model has 6 steps, each represented by a letter in the acronym title, with each step describing a set of tasks central to the informed selection and use of educational technology. So, the Azure acronym stands for these important components. We have analyze learners, state objectives, select methods, media and materials, utilize methods, media and materials, require learner participation, and evaluate and revise. So, the Azure model emphasizes learning where students are required to interact with their environment as fully engaged participants in the learning process. Azure involves interactive, experiential activities whereby the learners have direct contact with objects, events, and or other learners. Students gained meaning and understanding by direct interaction, and by building on previous knowledge, the use of media is also emphasized in this model. First, we have analyze learners. So, the first step in the Azure model is to analyze learners. To analyze the learners, you must examine the leader in detail. Like most things, without taking the time in the beginning to examine the learner, nothing you have prepared will be effective. Once you have an understanding and reasonable grasp for the learner's competence at the beginning of the instruction, the teacher can modify to assist the learner in their learning endeavors. As part of analyzing your learners, you must identify your audience. Your audience can be students, teachers, group members, an organization, a youth group, among many others. You must know the audience if you are to select the best medium to meet the objectives you have set. The audience can be analyzed in terms of their general characteristics. We have grade level, age, sex, mental, emotional, physical, or social problems, socioeconomic status, or etc. With specific entry competencies, we have prior knowledge, skills, and attitudes about the topic. And in learning styles, we have visual, musical, verbal, logical, and etc. And in analyzing the learners, we need to find out the general characteristics, entry competencies, and learning styles. So, first is general characteristics of the learners. So, a superficial analysis of learner characteristics can provide helpful leads in selecting instructional methods and media. The more advanced have a sufficient base for using audiovisual or even verbal materials. If learner apathy toward subject matter is a problem, Consider using a highly stimulating instructional approach, such as a dramatic videotape or a simulation game. Learners entering a new conceptual area for the first time may need more direct, concrete kinds of experiences such as field trips or role playing exercises. More advanced learners usually have a sufficient base for using audiovisual or even verbal materials. Heterogeneous groups, which include learners varying widely in their conceptual sophistication or in the amount of first hand experience they have with a topic, may profit from an audiovisual experience such as videotape. Such media presentations provide a common experiential base that can serve as an important point of reference for subsequent group discussion and individual study. Next is specific entry competencies. At the beginning, you have to assume that the learners lack the knowledge and skills, but they possess the knowledge or skills needed to learn and understand from the lesson. This assumption that learners have the prerequisite knowledge or skill to begin the lesson can seldom be accepted casually in school settings. Teachers of mixed ability class routinely anticipate that some students will need remedial help before they are ready to begin a particular unit of instruction. These realizations suggest that instructors must verify assumptions about entry competencies through informal means such as in-class questioning or out-of-class interviews, or more formal means such as testing with standardized or teacher-made tests. Entry tests are assessment, both formal and informal, that determine whether students possess the prerequisites. And lastly is learning styles. Learning style refers to a cluster of psychological traits that determine how an individual perceives, interacts with, and responds emotionally to learning environments. Next is state objectives. The stated objectives are statements describing what the learner will do as a result of instruction. In other words, objectives are the learning outcomes, that is, what will the student learn from the lesson. In order to develop proper objectives, you must frame them in terms of desired behavior, what the learner will be able to accomplish after completing the instruction. The objectives you should use be as specific as possible so the learner understands what they are to accomplish. If objectives are clearly and specifically stated, both the learning and teaching will become objective oriented. So, the ABCDs of well stated objectives. So, a well stated objective starts by naming the audience of learners for whom the objective is intended. It then specifies the behavior or capability to be learned and the conditions under which the capability would be observed. Specifies the degree to which the new skill must be mastered, the standard by which the capability can be judged. First is audience. So, audience should focus on what the learner is doing, not on what the teacher is doing. Learning is most likely to take place when the learner is active, mentally processing an idea or physically practicing a skill. Not what the teacher does. The objective begins by stating whose capability is going to be changed. Next is behavior. So the behavior, the heart of the objective, is the verb describing the new capability that the audience will have after instruction. This verb is most likely to communicate your intent clearly if it is stated as an observable behavior. Next is conditions. A statement of objectives should include the conditions under which performance is to be observed, if such conditions are relevant. And lastly is degree. So the final requirement of a well-stated objective is to indicate the standard by which acceptable performance will be judged. Next is select instructional methods, media, and materials. So once you know your audience and have a clear idea of what they should get out of the lesson, then it is time to select the appropriate method for the given learning task. Select available materials, modify existing materials, or design new materials to help accomplish this task. At this step, the instructor should connect the audience to the objectives. To connect the two, the teacher must determine what method to use. A systematic plan for using media demands that the media be selected systematically at first. Okay, so when selecting methods, media, and materials, we need to build a bridge between the audience and the objective. So, deciding on the appropriate method for the given learning tasks, first, it would be overly simplistic to believe that there is one method that is superior to all others or that serves all learning needs equally well. Teachers often structure assignments to allow students with different preferred learning styles to pursue their individual practice through different methods. Next is choosing a media format. So, a media format is the physical form in which a message is incorporated and displayed. Media formats include, for example, flip charts, slides, audio, film, video, and computer multimedia, or etc. So each has different strengths and limitations in terms of the types of messages that can be recorded and displayed. Choosing a media format can be a very complex task because of the following: vast array of media available, the infinite variety among learners, and the objectives to be pursued. Lastly is selecting available materials. So the majority of instructional materials used by teachers and trainers are off the shelf, that is, ready-made and available from school, district, or company collections or other easily accessible sources. Next is utilize media and materials. The next step in the Assure process for planning a lesson is to utilize technology, media, and materials. This is where you plan your role as the instructor for implementing your strategies and utilizing the technology, media, and materials to help your students master the learning objectives you have identified. You should describe in the detail how you will implement them into your lesson to help your learners meet the objectives. So, it is suggested here that you follow the 5Ps process, which includes the following. First, preview the technology, media, and materials. Second, prepare the technology, media, and materials. Make sure you have everything you need and that it all works. Third, prepare the environment. Fourth, prepare the learners. And last, provide the learning experience. Next is require learner participation. So the R step in the Assure acronym is where you require learner participation. Your lesson plan should include a description for how you will require your learners to know, comprehend, apply, analyze, synthesize, and evaluate the information included in the lesson. It is critical that your description states how you plan to get each learner actively and individually involved in the learning process. The goal here is for active learning to occur. Hence, all of your planned activities should provide opportunities for your learners to practice the new knowledge or skills and to receive feedback on their efforts before being formally assessed. So, participants are actively involved. Participation steps requires you to describe how you are going to get each learner actively and individually involved in the lesson. Students learn best when they are actively involved in the learning experience. Whatever your teaching strategy, be sure to incorporate questions and answers, discussion, group work, hands-on activities, and other ways of getting students actively involved in the learning of the content. You should seek to pay close attention to your learners and feel confident that they are truly grasping the content and not just listening. Participating in the learning will facilitate this level of understanding. Allow them to construct knowledge as opposed to trying to teach them knowledge. Finally, for this step, feedback must be provided to the learner before any type of evaluation is conducted. Next is evaluate and revise. So the last step of the Assure method is evaluate student performance. Here the evaluation should be matched to the objective. Ultimately, this last stage is the most important. You must evaluate the instruction process from start to finish using the objectives you created in the beginning. It is helpful to reflect on your objections, the instructional strategy, the instructional materials, and the assessment. By evaluating the learners against the objectives, it can be determined if the lesson was effective and whether any steps needs to be modified or re-examined. So, the Assure model supports the field of educational technology. It is based on the principle that no one student acquires information in the same way.